This is our fourth video on Emerson's compensation, and it is called Revenue Equals Cost. Here's another passage where I think, the tone is largely missed by the boys, or at least often, and they don't realize that he's sort of playing devil's advocate here. So, this is where he says, look, let's think about this. You could imagine somebody saying, what, you're saying I can't get the upper hand on life? I never get more than I put in? Well, why would I ever do anything then, right? Everything's indifferent. If nothing's ever on sale, why would I ever trade for it? You only trade for what's on sale. And so he's concerned, right? He's putting forth this objection to his own idea in order to make a point and get past it, and it's the coming passage where he gets past it. So turning point in the essay, right? There is a deeper fact in the soul than compensation, to wit, its own nature. The soul is not a compensation, but a life. Certainly a candidate for the most important line in the essay. Again, he doesn't call the essay a life, right? He calls it compensation because he thinks that's where the action is. That's where we're focused. That's where we waste so much time and energy wondering how we're going to get paid. Try to imagine God again. God's not gonna get paid, but God makes the universe anyway. Try to imagine, what would it cost to, pay Michelangelo for the Sistine Chapel, and that, to actually pay him for what it ends up being worth. There's not that much money around, right? But that doesn't mean he's not going to do it. Beethoven's cranking out these late string quartets, just in physical misery, and not even using the bathroom because he's writing so intently to try to get these things done before he dies. And there's life, right? Where it's the making. And the second quotation, right? There's virtue. I think the best way to explain this to kids and to understand it is to think about it in terms of making world. Right? When you're making world, there's no need for the kind of compensation that we usually stress about, because the world is what this is about. God is in the creation business. And when you're making friendships, when you're making teams, when you're making robots, when you're making schools, when you're making classes, when you're making families, the notion of getting paid from the outside, though fine and dandy, great, the more money the better, right? But it fades away. None of us are doing this for the kind of compensation that most people go into most jobs for. And we're trying to get the boys in that space, right? To think about those few things where they really, really don't care about the external compensation nearly as much as the making, and to try to excite them about that making. And so that's the basis of where we're going here, and we'll take one more crack at it. So if we try to think of it this way, right, the objector's saying, wait a minute, I invest energy like anybody invests anything because there's a profit involved. And so profit equals revenue minus cost. And what Emerson's saying is that, hey, revenue equals cost, right? You're not going to get more out of it than you put into it. And so, again, the objection would be, well, why would you ever invest if revenue equals cost, right? And again, one way to think about it, and we've talked about this before, but it really, I think, works, is to think, 5 equals 5 is not the same as 5,000 equals 5,000. Yeah, revenue always equals cost, but for one person, there is a friendship at the end of it. And for another person, they got to level 5 in a video game, and that's how they spent their summer. And other people were out learning how to make friends and learning how to build chapels and learning how to relate to people and serve their fellow man. Do the thing and you shall have the power. There's crappy little worlds and there's much bigger, more vibrant, interesting worlds. Do the thing and you shall have the power. 5 equals 5 is not the same as 5,000 equals 5,000. Neither of them has the kind of profit that an external goods being would be looking for. But one of them is a small little world, and one of them is a huge world. And again, the issue is try to think of it in terms of God and the making of world. What world have you made today? So takeaways for this video: you should be able to explain in your own words what it means for revenue to equals cost in the context of the essay. You should be able to explain in your own words how someone might conclude that if revenue equals cost, then it doesn't matter what we do. And you should be able to explain in your own words Emerson's response to the argument that if revenue equals cost, then it doesn't matter what we do. He doesn't agree with that response, and why. It's a pretty important point.